What? Now I'm going to have to know what you forgot.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, we'll discuss. We'll workshop. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to bring it up to level 1. And slide it up to level 2. For an actor I believe has some support in the room. Ladies and gentlemen, go on for Shaun Livingston!
Alright. I'll start with an interesting fact. Did you know, some of you might know anyway, but did you know that in France, until very recently, Red Bull used to be banned? Rhetorical question. I've always thought a fact like this sort of typifies the difference between France and England, because, in France, they ban Red Bull for health reasons, identifying it as a dangerous substance. In England, we take said dangerous substance, mix it with vodka, and discount it heavily to lure people into our shit nightclubs. There's just a world of difference, isn't there, in the attitudes towards food and drink between France and England. And this can be seen in the schools. I mean, if you look at the French schools, did you know they actually employ nutritionists who work closely with parents' committees to try and thrash out the most healthy menu possible for the kids. In England, parents are similarly motivated, as they demonstrated by pushing burgers and chips through the school gates when Jamie Oliver was trying to get kids off junk food. And these parents, they were outraged, weren't they? They were absolutely outraged at Jamie Oliver's attempts to get kids to eat a little bit more healthily. And I suppose they thought, in their own little way, by taking orders from the kids, getting the food from a local takeaway Chubby's, and then pushing the food through the school gates. I suppose they felt, they were standing up for justice. And, that's a resistance group worth having, isn't it, really? What are you fighting for? Heart disease! Join us next week when we campaign against disabled parking rights. But, the upshot of all this, really, is that, whilst in France you've got the school menu being dictated by nutritionists, in England, the school menu is being dictated by Chubby's Chip Shop. But, I don't know if you've seen a typical French school menu, but if you look at a typical French school menu, it's got starter of grapefruit, main course of grilled chicken and green beans, dessert of rice pudding, and the day snack is a tangerine. Now, can you imagine if that was served up in England? Can you imagine the headlines? I can see the headline now. Dinner lady gets stabbed. Ethel, 58, was found lying motionless on the dining room floor. Unclear as to whether cause of death was stab wounds or the whole grapefruit found stuffed down her throat. But I don't know. I think France undoubtedly have a better attitude, more healthy attitude towards food and drink. But I think the ban on Red Bull was a little bit excessive, really. It just seemed a little bit over the top, based on a few isolated cases of a few people who drank Red Bull and also died. And I think look, I'm no fancy lawyer or anything, but I could easily point to the amount of people who've died without drinking Red Bull, and say the evidence points to the fact that in fact, not drinking Red Bull is what kills you in the end. It's just not a very convincing case, is it? But one thing that annoys me is when people make errant conclusions about food. It annoys me when people make errant conclusions about food based on what happens when you consume that food in excess, because it's not a fair comparison. And to illustrate my example, I'd like to use the example of the Morgan Spurlock documentary, Super Size Me, and that's the one where Morgan Spurlock went a month eating McDonald's 3 times a day, and by the end he was suffering from liver dysfunction and he had also gained weight. Now, is that a useful conclusion? Is it a surprising conclusion? Was anybody watching that documentary having all their misconceptions cleared up? Was anybody watching that documentary going, wait a minute, oh, the phone, you're saying that chicken nuggets and chips followed by a donut doesn't constitute a well-balanced diet? It's not really a useful conclusion, not very groundbreaking, didn't really tell us anything we didn't already know. Next week, Morgan Spurlock goes a year without washing, discovering a surprising link to body odour. He seemed to think he was making a point, didn't he, by only accepting the supersized meal when he was offered it. And he got offered the supersized meal quite a lot, so he ended up having quite a few supersized meals instead. And you're just thinking, what point are you trying to make here? Oh, it's terrible how they trick you into accepting, the bigger meal. But I mean, this sort of conveniently glosses over the fact that people are allowed to say no when they're offered food. You know? And this is how it works in restaurants. You know, they offer you food, and when you've had enough, you say no. Would Sir like anything else? No, thanks. I'll have the meal. This is how you avoid staying in a restaurant forever. And, yeah, I'd like to see Morgan Spurlock employ the same sort of logic, you know, in a more upmarket restaurant, perhaps a French wine restaurant. You know, I only accepted more wine when they offered it to me. By the end of the month, I'd become a raging alcoholic and permanently impotent. So, what do you think about Professor David Nutt? He was the guy who got sacked, the advisor on government drug policy, and he got sacked for saying cannabis. You agree with the sacking, do you, madam?
No, I don't agree with the sacking.
Okay, okay. Well, I think I don't know. I mean, a lot of people have been saying, "Oh, it's terrible," but I don't know. I agree with the sacking because I think cannabis is really, really bad for you. I think David Nutt was wrong. Cannabis is really, really dangerous, and I know this for a fact. The reason I know this is that in a groundbreaking experiment, I replaced my 3 daily meals for a period of a month with hash. Now, I only upgraded to skunk when my dealer offered it to me. And by the end, I was a fucking wreck. Thanks very much.